The mega earthquake. It's coming. We don't know exactly when or how big it's going to be, but it's coming. It will be chaotic. And with millions of lives on the brink, California will be put to the ultimate test. What kind of devastation could we be dealing with? Is California ready for something like this? And what would be the economic impact? This is What If. And here's what would happen if a mega earthquake happens in California tomorrow. 1,800 people will die. 1,600 fires will ignite. 750 people will be trapped inside buildings. 270,000 people will be unable to return home. And 50,000 people will need emergency care. Search and rescue efforts will last for 19 days. These numbers are from the United States Geological Survey. They've estimated that if a 7.8 earthquake hits along the southern San Andreas Fault on a non-windy day at about 9 a.m., we will be thrust into this frightening scenario. They are also warning that there's a 20% chance the big one could hit the San Andreas Fault sometime in the next 30 years. Some experts predict it could be a catastrophic 8.2 magnitude quake. So, what is the San Andreas Fault? Well, it's a boundary between the Pacific Plate and the North American Plate. The fault extends into California roughly 1,200 kilometers, from Cape Mendocino to the Mexican border. Cities like San Diego, Los Angeles, and Big Sur sit on the Pacific Plate. The North American Plate has San Francisco, Sacramento, and the Sierra Nevada. San Andreas is a transform fault. This is when two plates slide past one another. The average speed of the moving plates is 0.6 centimeters per year. Although this doesn't seem like much, they will actually lodge themselves together and not move for years. And this is where the problem starts. Imagine the damage as built-up strain finally releases and breaks the rock along the fault. This causes the plates to shift a few feet all at once. The sudden release of energy creates seismic waves, and it's these waves that we feel as earthquakes. The San Andreas Fault has experienced massive earthquakes in the past. The great 1906 San Francisco earthquake is one of the most significant earthquakes of all time. At 5:12 a.m. on the morning of April 18th, a foreshock was felt throughout the Bay Area. Then, 20 to 25 seconds later, the earthquake hit. The estimated magnitude was 7.9, and the violent shocks lasted for 45 to 60 seconds. It was so powerful that it was felt from southern Oregon to the south of Los Angeles, and inland as far as central Nevada. It's been estimated that around 21 to 2,800 people died that day. If the mega earthquake hits California tomorrow, what sort of devastation could we be dealing with? If it is the big one, it would have a magnitude of about 8 that would rupture a 322-kilometer stretch along the southernmost part of the fault. Buildings built before 1980 are in danger of collapsing. A recent study suggests that up to 25% of the buildings constructed to the current earthquake code will be unusable after the quake. After the big one, explosions could be triggered, and fires would erupt throughout the devastated cities. Landslides could lead to more fatalities and damage. Electricity and sewage could come to a halt, along with transportation. Highways, railways, airport runways, and bridges could become unstable for weeks, even months. One of our basic survival needs is access to fresh water, which would be difficult after the quake. The major aqueduct infrastructure that pumps water into Southern California crosses the San Andreas Fault, so it seems unlikely that this would be unaffected. Now, if you're thinking it couldn't get any worse than that, parts of the San Andreas Fault also intersect with oil and gas pipelines. If these pipelines break, the lethal consequences, both for human health and the environment, will be devastating. But what is the economic impact? Well, California has the 5th largest economy in the world, so not only would the effects be felt by California and the United States, they would also impact the world. The estimated cost of the big one is $200 billion. $33 billion of this comes from property damage and $50 billion in lost economic activity. Less than 20% of California buildings are covered by earthquake insurance, so most people will need to pay the rebuilding costs. These same people might decide to relocate to other parts of the U.S. This trend in the dropping population was observed in Los Angeles after the 2 earthquakes of 1971 and 1994. The population decreased for 2 years after both quakes, and these were relatively small, having magnitudes of 6.5 and 6.7. Then there's the business impact. Not just to California from the mass exodus of population, but also California's importance to the rest of the United States. Over 40% of total imports to the U.S. come in through Los Angeles and Long Beach ports. And with the massive disruption of transportation routes, especially those that cross the San Andreas Fault, getting these goods to the rest of the country will be difficult, to say the least. So, with the largest U.S. economy and the 5th largest in the world crushed, would this send us into another global economic crash? What would the future of the U.S. and global economy look like after this? Well, that's a story for another What If.